Her voice shattered the silence. 7 words. 7 nails hammered into the coffin of my life. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. My world fractured with the sound of her confession, splintering into jagged pieces I couldn't grasp. The room closed in, walls shrinking, air turning thin. I searched her eyes for the truth, but all I found was the echo of my own destruction. I blinked, and everything was gone, my family, my future, my name. Just 7 words, and it was over. Or so they thought. The sound of betrayal isn't loud. It doesn't crash or explode. It shatters, quietly, suddenly, like glass splintering under pressure. For Ethan, it came in 7 words, whispered with trembling lips and wide, glassy eyes. Ethan got me pregnant. Sophie's voice was soft, almost fragile, cracking just enough to sound real. Her hands clutched her stomach, her eyes watering as if the mere thought of it brought her pain. Chloe stood frozen, her hand covering her mouth, disbelief etched into every line of her face. Ethan barely registered the accusation. It didn't make sense. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words never came. Chloe's hand shot out before he could even form a sentence, her palm cracking against his cheek with such force that his head snapped to the side. "How could you?" she screamed, her voice jagged with betrayal. "My own sister?" "I didn't," he began, but she didn't let him finish. Her hands tightened, her face flushed with anger. "You disgust me. It all happened so fast." Her brothers, Tony and Jack, stormed in from the hallway, their expressions dark, eyes narrowed to slits. They moved with purpose, hands grabbing him roughly by the arms, fingers digging into his flesh like iron clamps. He didn't fight them. He didn't struggle. "Let's go, scumbag," Tony spat, his grip tightening. "You think you can walk around like nothing happened?" Jack added, shoving him forward. Ethan stumbled, the back of his knees slamming against the edge of the coffee table. He tried to steady himself, but their hands were relentless, shoving him through the living room, past the family photos and the memories that now felt like cruel mockeries. "Chloe, wait," he called back, his voice cracking with desperation. "You know me. I didn't do this." She didn't even turn around. Her shoulders were rigid, arms crossed, eyes locked on the floor as if she couldn't bear to look at him. Sophie stood behind her, hands still on her stomach, her gaze meeting his. She smirked. Just for a second. A flash of satisfaction before she masked it with tears. It hit him like a punch to the gut. Sophie was lying. "Wait," he shouted, trying to twist out of their grip, but Tony's hand drove into his midsection, knocking the breath out of him. He doubled over, gasping for breath, the floor tilting beneath him. "Shut up," Tony growled, his voice low and venomous. "We're done listening to your lies." They dragged him out the front door, the sunlight blinding him as he stumbled onto the front steps. Neighbors stood on their lawns, eyes wide, phones raised. He heard the clicks of camera shutters, the whispers spreading like wildfire. "That's Ethan? I heard he slept with his wife's sister. What a piece of garbage." The words hit him from every direction, sharp and unyielding. Tony shoved him onto the curb, his back hitting the pavement hard. Jack stepped forward, towering over him, his posture tense and unyielding. "If I ever see you around here again, you won't be welcome back. Understand?" Ethan tried to speak, but the wind had been knocked out of him. He stared up at Jack, blinking through the sunlight, his hands shaking as he struggled to sit up. His heart pounded in his ears, drowning out the whispers, the laughter, the judgment. The door slammed shut, and that was it. His life, his home, his family, his name sealed away behind wood and steel. He sat there for what felt like hours, knees pulled to his chest, the sting of betrayal spreading through his body like a poison. The neighbors filtered back into their homes, the whispers dying down, the phones turned off. Ethan sat in the silence, his hands shaking, his breath ragged. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. He stared at the screen, no messages, no calls. He dialed Chloe's number, his hands trembling as it rang. Once, twice, 3 times. It went a voicemail. He dialed again, and again, and again. Nothing. Ethan dropped the phone onto the pavement, the screen shattering against the concrete. He stared at it, the glass cracked and splintered, just like everything else. The pavement felt cold and unforgiving beneath him. Ethan sat there, his hands still trembling from the shock of it all. His cheek throbbed where Chloe's hand had connected, a raw sting that pulsed with each heartbeat. Around him, whispers grew louder, neighbors standing just far enough away to feel safe but close enough to gawk. Phones were raised, cameras flashing, capturing his humiliation, spreading it with the click of a button. He could hear the whispers, the murmurs spreading like wildfire. "I always knew he was too smooth. Look at him now. With her own sister? God, that's low. I hope she burns his stuff. He doesn't deserve a damn thing. Ethan forced himself to breathe, each inhale scraping against his ribs. He tried to stand, but his legs shook beneath him, buckling under the weight of disbelief and shame. He reached for his car keys, fumbling in his pocket. Empty. They had taken everything from him before tossing him to the curb. A car door slammed nearby, and he glanced up just in time to see Tony and Jack striding back out of the house. Jack tossed something metallic into the grass, a bundle of keys that glimmered under the sunlight. Ethan's car keys. Get up, Tony snarled, crossing his arms over his chest. His eyes were hard, unyielding. Ethan looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. You know I didn't do this. You have to know. Jack stepped forward, his boots scraping against the concrete. I don't know a damn thing, but I know you're going to get off our property before we make you. Ethan hesitated. Please, just let me talk to her. Let me explain. Jack's hand struck his face before he could finish. A surge of pain shot through him, leaving him momentarily stunned. He staggered back, hand flying to his face as a metallic taste lingered on his tongue. He staggered, but managed to keep his balance, his vision blurred for a moment. Consider that a warning, Jack growled, cracking his knuckles. You don't get to talk to her. You don't get to step foot back here. It's over. Ethan stared back at them, his vision blurring with tears of rage and desperation. His hands tightened, but he held back. What would be the point? They were 3 against 1, and the neighbors would only cheer them on. He could see them now, phones still raised, whispering, laughing, recording every second of his downfall. Without another word, he staggered forward, collapsing to one knee before pushing himself back up. His keys lay in the grass, glinting like discarded scraps. He bent down, fingers scraping the dirt as he picked them up. His car was parked crookedly on the curb, the only thing left of his old life. He forced his legs to move, one step at a time, until he reached the driver's side door. He could still hear them laughing, still hear the whispers that clung to his back like shadows. He didn't turn around. He didn't look back. The car door creaked as he pulled it open, collapsing into the driver's seat. His hands shook as he jammed the key into the ignition, turning it hard. The engine sputtered to life, a low rumble that vibrated through the frame. He gripped the wheel tightly, knuckles white, jaw clenched. For just a moment, his eyes drifted back to the house, his house. The windows were covered, the lights dimmed. Drawn. He could still see Sophie's silhouette through the frosted glass, her hand resting on Chloe's shoulder. He wanted to scream, wanted to throw open the door and rush back inside, to tear down those walls with his bare hands and expose every lie, every manipulation. But he didn't. He couldn't, because he knew the truth would be ignored. He put the car into drive, his foot heavy on the pedal. The tires squealed against the pavement, leaving dark streaks in their wake. The road stretched out before him, long and winding, carrying him away from the whispers, the judgments, the eyes that had watched him break. His hands were steady now, gripping the wheel with purpose. He drove without direction, without a plan, just forward, away from the ashes of his life. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat, screen flashing with messages. What happened? Is it true? I saw the video. He grabbed it, his hand shaking, and tossed it out the window. It shattered on the asphalt, pieces scattering like dust in the wind. Ethan didn't look back. He couldn't. He drove for hours, his mind blank, the lines on the road stretching endlessly before him. The gas light blinked on, the needle quivering on empty. He pulled into a fog-drenched harbor town, its main street lined with crooked lampposts and rusted signs. He didn't stop driving until he found a motel on the edge of the docks, its neon light flickering against the early morning mist. He pulled into the lot, killing the engine. The silence settled around him like a blanket, heavy and suffocating. He stepped out of the car, the chill biting at his skin, and walked into the office. The man behind the counter barely glanced up. One night or two. Ethan paused, his hands flexed at his sides. He took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the room, the dust clinging to the corners, the flickering bulb that buzzed with each pulse of electricity. Make it a week, he replied. The man nodded, pushing a key across the counter. Ethan took it, the cold metal pressing into his palm. What name should I put down? The man asked, pen poised over the ledger. Ethan hesitated, his mind racing, the whispers still echoing in his skull. He swallowed hard, forcing the words out slowly. Logan. The name's Logan. The man scribbled it down, not even bothering to look up. Room 12. Down the hall, last door on the right. Ethan, no. Logan took the key, slipping it into his pocket. He walked down the hall, his footsteps muffled by the worn carpet, the flickering lights casting shadows that clung to his heels. He unlocked the door, stepping inside the tiny room. It was bare, just a bed, a chair, and a window overlooking the docks. He shut the door behind him, the lock clicking into place. For the first time in hours, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He crossed the room, pulling back the curtains. The harbor stretched out before him, the fog clinging to the water like a secret. Boats bobbed silently in the distance, their lights flickering against the mist. Logan sank into the chair by the window, his hands folded in his lap, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, didn't know how he would rebuild from the ashes of a life burned to the ground. But he was still here, and that was enough. The harbor town woke up slowly, blanketed in fog that hung heavy over the water. Logan stepped out of the motel room, the chill biting at his skin. He pulled his jacket tighter, shoving his hands deep into his pockets as he walked along the pier. Fishermen were already out, boats bobbing on the gentle waves, nets cast wide. He kept his head down, blending into the quiet rhythm of the town. He found a diner on the corner, its neon sign flickering against the gray sky. He stepped inside, the bell above the door chiming softly. The woman behind the counter barely looked up, sliding a menu his way. "What'll it be?" she asked, voice rough but not unkind. "Coffee, eggs, and toast." He didn't look up, scanning the room. Empty booths, cracked vinyl seats, the faint hum of an old radio. She called the order to the back, and he settled into his seat, sipping the coffee she poured him. It was bitter, sharp on his tongue, but warm. He didn't mind. He ate in silence when the plate came, chewing slowly, savoring each bite. It had been days since he'd eaten anything substantial. The woman lit a cigarette, studying him with narrowed eyes. "Passing through, maybe." She raised an eyebrow, blowing smoke to the side. "Well, if you're looking for work, docks are always hiring. Not glamorous, but it pays." He nodded, leaving a few bills on the counter before stepping back into the fog. The air was crisp, biting at his cheeks as he made his way down to the docks. Men worked in silence, hauling crates, their breath visible in the cool morning air. Logan approached one of the workers, a grizzled man with calloused hands. "You hiring?" The man glanced him over. "You got 2 hands?" "Yeah." "Then grab a crate." Logan did. His back ached, his hands blistered, but he didn't stop. He worked through the morning, blending into the rhythm of the town. Quiet, unnoticed, unremarkable. Exactly what he wanted. At the end of the day, the man nodded in approval. "You work hard. Be here tomorrow. We start at dawn." Logan nodded, the ache in his muscles dull and familiar. He watched the others filter out, laughing and cursing as they walked toward the pub at the edge of town. He stayed for a moment, staring out at the harbor as the fog thickened over the water. For the first time in weeks, he felt something other than numbness. He felt purpose. The days blended into each other with the rhythm of work and silence. Logan rose before dawn, the chill of the morning biting through his jacket as he made his way to the docks. He didn't talk much, just nodded to the same faces, lifted the same crates, and hauled the same ropes. He was a ghost among the living, moving in shadows, invisible. His hands grew rougher, palms calloused from the ropes, knuckles split from the weight of the work. It didn't bother him. The pain was something solid, something real. He embraced it, let it ground him. It was better than the hollowness he had carried with him since that day. After weeks of work, the man who had first hired him finally stopped to speak. His name was Harris, a stout, barrel-chested man with a gruff voice and eyes that missed nothing. He watched Logan unload a crate, nodding in quiet approval. "You work hard," Harris said, lighting up a cigarette. The flame flickered against the wind before catching. He blew smoke into the morning air, watching it swirl and disappear. "Where you from?" Logan paused, setting the crate down with a soft thud. "Nowhere important." Harris chuckled, taking another drag. "Fair enough. You looking to stick around?" Logan wiped his hands on his pants, nodding slowly. "If there's work, there's always work." Harris flicked the ash from his cigarette, eyes narrowing. "Doc Master's been looking for help. Someone who knows how to keep things in order." "Interested?" Logan didn't hesitate. Yeah, I'm interested. Harris nodded. Good. Be here early tomorrow. We'll get you sorted. Logan watched him go, the cigarette smoke trailing behind him like a ghost. For the first time in months, he felt something stir beneath the surface. Not quite hope, but something close. The next morning, Harris introduced him to the dockmaster, a wiry man named Bill with sharp eyes and a handshake that crushed bone. Bill didn't ask questions. He handed Logan a clipboard, showed him where the shipments came in, and pointed out the ledgers. You keep things moving, you keep things clean, and you don't ask stupid questions, Bill said flatly. We got a deal? Yeah, Logan replied, taking the clipboard. It was good work. Steady. Logan learned quickly, memorizing the routes, the faces, the schedules. He found himself slipping into the rhythm of the town, the whispers fading into the background. His hands stayed busy, his mind stayed quiet. He liked it that way. Weeks turned into months. Logan became a fixture at the docks, his presence steady and unyielding. People started to recognize him, not as Ethan, not as the man cast out, but as Logan, the man who worked hard and asked for nothing. And for the first time, he began to feel like maybe he belonged. Logan found comfort in the predictability of his days. The dock work was brutal but simple: unload, catalog, stack, repeat. His hands grew stronger, his body hardened by the routine. The men at the docks grew used to him, nodding as he passed, sometimes offering a grunt of acknowledgement. He never asked for more than the work itself. He moved into a small apartment above a bait shop, the rent paid in cash at the beginning of every month. It wasn't much, just a bed, a chair, and a window that overlooked the harbor, but it was his. He kept it clean, spare. No photographs, no clutter, nothing to remind him of the life he left behind. In the mornings, he stopped by the diner for coffee, always served by the same waitress, Maggie. She was older, with hair pulled back in a tight bun and a permanent scowl etched into her face. But she poured his coffee without asking and always slid a plate of toast his way with a nod. It became part of his routine. One morning, as he sipped his coffee, she leaned over the counter, eyeing him curiously. You been down at the docks long? Few months, he replied, keeping his gaze steady. Sam says you work harder than anyone down there. She poured more coffee, the steam curling into the air. Never seen a man keep his head down like you do. Logan shrugged, not offering more. Maggie raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Well, they're looking for someone to help with inventory. Pays better. More steady. He glanced up. Who's hiring? She nodded out the window toward a squat, brick building on the edge of the docks. Harris. He's good people. You want me to put in a word? Logan considered it, his hands wrapped around the warm mug. Finally, he nodded. Yeah, I'd appreciate that. She slid him a slip of paper with a name and number scribbled on it. Tell him Maggie sent you. He'll take care of you. The job was his by the end of the week. Harris took one look at his work ethic and hired him on the spot. You don't waste time, Harris grunted as they walked through the warehouse, crates stacked to the ceiling. I like that. Logan nodded, eyes scanning the space. What do you need? Everything. Inventory's a mess. Shipments are late. Half the guys can't read the manifest right. He slapped a crate with his hand, sending dust swirling. You get this place in order. I'll make it worth your time. Logan didn't need to be asked twice. He got to work immediately, sorting through boxes, cross-referencing lists, marking shipments that had been left to rot in the back. The place was chaos, but chaos was easy to fix if you were willing to get your hands dirty. He was. Harris noticed. After a few weeks, the shipments ran on time. The workers started coming to Logan with questions instead of Harris. Inventory was checked, double-checked, and logged neatly into binders that hadn't been touched in years. The dockmaster walked through one afternoon, looking impressed. Didn't think anyone could make sense of this mess, he remarked, slapping Logan on the back. Logan just nodded, wiping the dust from his hands. It's just work, he replied. But it was more than that. For the first time since he left everything behind, he felt solid. Real. His hands were steady, his back strong. People knew his name, not Ethan, but Logan. It was enough. He kept to himself mostly, going back to his apartment at night, the quiet hum of the harbor lulling him to sleep. But word spread. People started coming to him for things, fixing engines, repairing nets, sometimes just for advice on how to straighten out a ledger. He did it all quietly, methodically, never asking for anything in return. And with each passing day, Logan grew stronger, more rooted in this new life he had built with his own hands. As the months slipped by, Logan found himself becoming part of the fabric of the town. His work at the docks didn't just go unnoticed, it was talked about. Fishermen mentioned his name over pints at the pub, dock workers nodded at him with respect, and even Maggie at the diner poured his coffee with a smile that wasn't there before. Harris, true to his word, kept him busy. Logan handled inventory, managed shipments, and even oversaw repairs on the older boats that creaked and groaned under the weight of age and salt. He found comfort in the simplicity of it. Work that started at dawn and ended when the sun dipped behind the waves. It wasn't long before word spread beyond the docks. Local shopkeepers began asking for his help. Sometimes it was fixing a jammed door, sometimes repairing a fence blown loose by the wind. Logan never said no. He worked with his hands, head down, shoulders squared against the weight of the past. People stopped asking where he came from. They stopped prying into his business. He was just Logan now, the quiet man who could fix anything. One evening, Harris pulled him aside as they locked up the warehouse. "You're making a name for yourself," he grunted, lighting up a cigarette. Logan shrugged, wiping his hands on a rag. "Just doing the work." Harris chuckled, the smoke curling from his lips. "People talk. Say you're the hardest worker this place has seen in a long time. Some even say you got a knack for business." Logan glanced up, surprised. "Business?" "Yeah," Harris replied, taking another drag. "That old shipyard on the East End. Place has been falling apart for years. The owner's been looking to sell. You should take a look." Logan shook his head. "I'm not much of a businessman." Harris smirked. "Could have fooled me." The thought lingered long after Harris walked away. Logan had rebuilt his life with his hands, steady, strong, unyielding. Maybe it was time to build something that lasted. The next week, Logan found himself standing outside the rusted gates of the old shipyard. Weeds grew between the cracked pavement, rust clinging to the iron fence like barnacles. He walked through the main lot, his footsteps echoing against the empty hulls of ships that had long since been forgotten. The owner, an old man with a limp and eyes sharp as glass, met him at the entrance to the main building. "You're the guy Harris sent?" Logan nodded, extending his hand. "I'm Logan." The old man shook it firmly, his grip stronger than expected. "Name's Collins. This place is a damn mess, but she's got good bones. If you've got the guts to fix her up, I might consider letting her go." Logan walked the grounds, inspecting the main office, the loading docks, the machinery that had been left to rot. It was broken, forgotten, but not beyond repair. He ran his hand along the edge of a rusted beam, flakes of metal crumbling under his touch. His mind was already calculating repairs, investments, the work it would take to bring it back to life. "I'll take it," he said finally, turning back to Collins. The old man raised an eyebrow. "Just like that. Just like that." Collins grinned, his eyes gleaming with approval. "Then she's yours." Within weeks, the shipyard came alive. Logan poured everything he had into it. Sweat, muscle, and the few savings he'd managed to scrape together. He worked from dawn until well after dark, repairing beams, fixing roofs, dragging machinery back to life with his bare hands. Harris sent over workers, men who respected Logan enough to follow his lead without question. The first ship docked 3 months later. It was small, barely seaworthy, but it was enough. Logan watched it pull in from his office window, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. He had built this, taken something broken and made it whole again. The townspeople started to notice. Men came to him for work. Shopkeepers began to ask for his help, and the harbor once again echoed with the sounds of cranes and hammers. He wasn't just Logan the dock worker anymore. He was Logan the shipyard owner, and for the first time since he left his old life behind, he felt like he had found his place. The shipyard thrived. What was once rusted and forgotten now buzzed with life. Workers moved between docks, hauling crates and loading ships, their voices carrying over the crash of waves against the hulls. Logan stood at the edge of the pier, hands folded, watching as another freighter pulled in. The town had started to change, too. Businesses flourished, the market grew busier, and the docks bustled with trade. People knew him now, not as the shadow that wandered into town months ago, but as Logan, the man who had rebuilt the shipyard from the ground up. He moved through the town with quiet confidence, nodding to familiar faces, helping where he could. His hands were always busy, his mind always sharp. He kept his past buried, sealed beneath layers of work and sweat, until she showed up. It happened on a gray afternoon, the sky heavy with the threat of rain. Logan was overseeing a shipment of lumber when he saw her, standing at the edge of the pier, her figure shadowed by the fog that rolled off the water. His hands froze mid-movement, the coil of rope slipping from his grip. Chloe. Her hair was shorter, shoulders slightly hunched, but it was unmistakably her. She scanned the docks, eyes wide, searching for him. He felt a familiar burn rise in his chest, a flicker of something sharp and painful. He hadn't heard her voice in nearly 2 years. Not since the accusations. Not since she turned her back and let him be thrown out like he was nothing. Harris's voice snapped him back to the present. Hey, you okay? Logan blinked, his hands flexing instinctively. Yeah, fine. He forced himself to turn back to the crates, lifting one onto his shoulder, the strain familiar and grounding. But he could feel her eyes scanning the docks, lingering just long enough for him to know she was still there. He carried the crate to the storage area, setting it down with a thud. When he looked back, she was gone. The pier was empty, the fog swallowing her whole. But she had found him. After all this time, she had found him. The next few days passed in a blur of tension. Logan kept to his routine, but his eyes flickered to the pier more often, his hands stalling whenever he caught the shape of a woman standing too close to the water. He didn't tell Harris, didn't mention it to the guys on the dock. He just waited. And then she came back. This time, she didn't stay on the pier. She walked right into the shipyard, her heels clicking against the concrete, the fog curling around her legs. Men paused as she passed, their eyes following her with curiosity and whispers. But she ignored them all. She was looking for him. Logan stepped out from behind a stack of crates, wiping his hands on his jeans. Their eyes met across the yard, and for a moment, neither of them moved. She swallowed hard, her lips parting as if to speak, but nothing came out. He raised an eyebrow, folding his arms across his chest. You got something to say? Her eyes flickered with something, regret, maybe, fear, definitely. She stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan. That's not my name, he replied coldly, his voice steady. She flinched, her hands twisting together. I didn't know where else to go. Logan stared back at her, unmoved. Seems like you had plenty of places to go before. Her breath shook, hands clutching at the hem of her coat. I know what happened. I know the truth. He didn't blink. Didn't flinch. What truth? Her voice cracked, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Sophie lied. He said nothing. She took another step forward, her heels echoing in the silence. She made it up. Everything. The pregnancy, the accusations, she was never. Her voice faltered, and she looked down, fingers shaking. She just wanted you gone. The silence stretched between them, heavy and unyielding. Logan watched her, his expression hard and unreadable. And you believed her. Her eyes snapped back to his, desperate and hollow. I was wrong. He chuckled, the sound sharp and humorless. That's it. You were wrong. Chloe's face crumpled, her hands reaching out as if to touch him, but she stopped herself. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't change anything. But I need you to know I'm sorry. Logan looked past her, his gaze settling on the horizon, the mist swirling over the water. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Finally, he looked back, his eyes cold and unyielding. You should go. Her breath hitched. Please, just talk to me. Let me explain. There's nothing left to explain, he replied, stepping back. You made your choice. So did I. She lingered for a moment, the desperation clear on her face. But she knew. She turned slowly, her footsteps dragging as she walked away, the fog swallowing her whole once more. Logan watched her disappear, his hands still and steady. She had found him, dragged the truth into the light. But it didn't change a thing. Not for him. Not anymore. The docks were silent the next morning, wrapped in a thick fog that clung to the water like smoke. Logan moved through the familiar rhythm of work, lifting crates, checking manifests, nodding to the usual faces, but the tension coiled tight in his chest refused to unravel. Her voice still echoed in his mind, soft and broken. Sophie lied. He worked harder than usual, muscles straining under the weight of each crate. The pain was grounding, solid. It kept him from thinking too much, kept him rooted to the present. Harris wandered over around midday, a cigarette dangling from his lips. You look like hell, Logan, he grunted, squinting against the haze. Logan shrugged, wiping the sweat from his brow. Long night. Harris nodded, flicking ash to the ground. Well, don't work yourself to death. You're no good to me if you keel over. He slapped Logan on the back and wandered off, leaving him alone with the noise of the harbor and the weight of his thoughts. By evening, Logan was the last one left. The others had filtered out, heading home or to the bar on the corner of Main Street. He stayed behind, dragging the last crate into the storage bay, the echo of his footsteps the only sound. He closed the doors, sliding the heavy lock into place, and turned back toward the pier. The fog was rolling and thicker now, blanketing the water in a shroud of gray. He walked to the edge, leaning against the railing, staring out into the mist. His reflection shimmered on the surface, blurred and indistinct. Sophie lied. The words pulsed in his mind, refusing to settle. He had built this life, this version of himself, on the ashes of betrayal. He had left it all behind, started fresh, clawed his way back from nothing. Now, the truth dangled in front of him like bait, tempting him to reach out and claim it. But what would that change? He stayed there for a long time, watching the mist swirl and drift across the water. The town lights flickered to life behind him, casting long shadows that stretched out across the dock. He finally turned away, his footsteps heavy, the boards creaking under his weight. The next morning, Logan walked back to the shipyard with a purpose. Harris greeted him with a nod, and the men worked in silence, hauling crates and unloading shipments. By midday, Logan slipped away, walking to the far end of the dock where the old payphone stood. It was rusted and cracked, its metal shell flecked with salt, but it still worked. He fished a handful of coins from his pocket, dropping them into the slot. The line rang twice before clicking. A woman's voice answered, sharp and clipped. "Who is this?" Logan didn't hesitate. "I need a favor." There was a pause, followed by a chuckle. Well, I never thought I'd hear your voice again. I'm calling it in." She sighed, the sound crackling through the line. "You still in trouble?" "Not anymore." He leaned against the payphone, eyes scanning the water. "But someone else's." Another pause. "You want me to look into her?" "Yes." "Her name's Sophie. I want everything, every call, every account, every lie she's ever told. You find it, you send it to me. Consider it done." The line went dead, and Logan hung up the receiver, the weight in his chest lifting just a little. He walked back to the shipyard, his footsteps steady, his mind sharp. It didn't take long. The package arrived a week later, sealed and stamped with no return address. He opened it alone in his office, pulling out the thick folder, his eyes scanning the documents inside. Phone records, bank transfers, emails, pictures. It was all there, laid out in perfect order. Sophie had been running a game for years. The lies, the manipulation, Chloe wasn't her first target, and Ethan wasn't her first victim. He read through each page, his expression hardening with every new revelation. She had stolen money, blackmailed old lovers, even framed a former boss for fraud. This wasn't just a petty lie. It was systematic. A career built on manipulation and destruction. Logan leaned back in his chair, the folder spread open before him. His mind began to work, piecing together a plan, calculating every move. If Sophie wanted to destroy lives, she would finally understand what it meant to lose everything. But he wasn't going to confront her. No, not yet. This time, he would do it right. Piece by piece, layer by layer, he would unravel everything she built. Not just in front of Chloe, but in front of everyone. He glanced at the window, the fog clinging to the glass like ghostly hands. His reflection stared back at him, hard and unyielding. He wasn't Ethan anymore. Ethan had been crushed, left bleeding on the pavement. He was Logan now, and he was ready to tear it all apart, brick by brick. Logan moved quietly, like a shadow slipping between the cracks. He spent the next few days preparing, gathering the materials he would need, organizing the evidence he had collected. He kept to his routine, working the docks during the day, keeping his head down, nodding to familiar faces. But his mind was a storm, calculating every move, every step that would lead to her unraveling. The town was small, its secrets even smaller. He knew people now: Harris, Maggie from the diner, Bill from the dockmaster's office. They liked him, respected him. He had built that trust carefully, brick by brick, and he was going to use it. It began with whispers. Subtle conversations, nothing more than passing remarks over coffee or a pint of beer. He mentioned Sophie's name once or twice, nothing accusatory, just enough to plant the seed. "She used to be real close to some folks around here," he would say, shaking his head with a knowing look. "Didn't end well, from what I heard." People listened. People always listened. The town was small, the gossip even smaller. He didn't push it, just let it simmer beneath the surface, growing roots that spread with each telling. A week later, Maggie slid him a cup of coffee at the counter, her eyes sharp and curious. "You know Sophie?" she asked casually, her voice low enough that only he could hear. He took a slow sip, setting the cup down carefully. "Knew of her. She's trouble. Maggie leaned in, her elbows resting on the counter. Heard some things. People say she left town in a hurry. Lots of debts. Lots of burned bridges. Logan shrugged, his gaze steady. That's what happens when you step on enough people. The rumors spread faster than he could have imagined. People who never knew Sophie began to ask questions, whispers at the market, side glances at the bar. Her name became a smudge, a stain that couldn't be wiped away. He listened, nodded, added to it where he could, all while keeping his hands clean. The second step came 2 weeks later. Logan waited until the right moment, slipping the evidence he had gathered into small, unmarked envelopes. He sent them anonymously, one to the town council, one to the local newspaper, and one directly to the mayor's office. Each envelope contained bank statements, legal records, and detailed logs of Sophie's financial misconduct. He didn't need to write a note. The proof spoke for itself. The fallout was immediate. By the end of the week, whispers had turned to shouts. Sophie's name was dragged through the mud, her reputation dismantled in real time. People stopped speaking to her family, the doors of her once friendly neighbors now closed tight. She tried to defend herself, tried to spin the lies into something softer, but the evidence was overwhelming. She was finished. Logan watched it unfold from a distance, his hands steady, his expression unchanging. He didn't need to show his face. He didn't need to say a word. The truth was out now, and it moved like wildfire. 3 days later, he received a call from a blocked number. He answered, his voice calm. Hello. The voice on the other end crackled with static, but he recognized it immediately. Chloe, I don't know what you did, but it's everywhere. The whole town is talking. People are saying she stole money. That she lied to everyone. Logan leaned back in his chair, watching the fog swirl outside his window. I didn't do anything, he replied, his tone smooth. Truth has a way of catching up. Chloe was silent for a moment, her breath shaky. I'm sorry. He didn't respond. He let the silence stretch, long and unyielding. Finally, she spoke again, her voice cracking. I should have known. I should have believed you. Logan's grip on the phone tightened, but his voice remained steady. Yes, you should have. There was a pause. I don't know how to fix this. You don't, he replied simply. It's already done. She sniffed, the sound soft and broken. Can I see you? No. Her breath caught. Please, Ethan. I just want to talk. That's not my name, he replied, voice sharp and final. And you have nothing left to say. He hung up, the silence in his office pressing against his ears. He leaned back, exhaling slowly, the tension in his shoulders unwinding. Outside, the town moved on as if nothing had happened, unaware of the strings he had pulled from the shadows. Logan stood, walking to the window, watching the harbor stretch out before him. He had done it. He had exposed her, burned down the life she had built on lies. But there was still more to do. He wasn't finished. Not yet. The next few weeks were quiet, almost eerily so. Sophie had vanished from the town's whispers, her name now spoken only in hushed tones, always accompanied by shaking heads and disapproving glances. Logan continued his work at the docks, steady and unyielding, just another part of the landscape. But things had changed. People looked at him differently now, not just with respect, but with curiosity. The shipyard grew. Word spread that Logan was good with his hands, that he could fix anything. He found himself working longer hours, taking on more jobs, repairing engines, welding cracked hulls, restoring old fishing boats that had been left to rot. He didn't mind. The work was honest, and it kept his mind from wandering back to the shadows of his old life. One afternoon, Harris approached him while he was fixing the hull of an old tugboat. Got a visitor asking for you, he said, his voice low and serious. Logan straightened, wiping the grease from his hands. Who? Harris shrugged, nodding toward the entrance of the shipyard. Didn't catch her name. She's waiting by the gate. Logan's jaw tightened, but he didn't hesitate. He walked across the gravel, boots crunching beneath his feet. The fog was thinner today, and sunlight slanted through the gaps in the clouds, casting long shadows on the ground. He saw her standing there, arms crossed, her back straight. Chloe. Her eyes caught his as he approached, and she swallowed hard, her hands twisting together. You didn't answer my calls. That's because I didn't want to, he replied flatly. She winced, but didn't move. Can I talk to you? He glanced around the shipyard, then back at her. I'm busy. Please, she pressed, her voice cracking. Just 5 minutes. Logan studied her, his eyes scanning her face. She looked tired, more than that she looked broken. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes hollow. He nodded once, curtly. 5 minutes. They stepped to the side, away from the noise of the docks. Chloe took a deep breath, her eyes flickering nervously. "I know you don't owe me anything," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "But I needed you to know that I'm sorry. For everything." Logan crossed his arms, his expression unmoved. "Sorry fixes nothing." "I know," she whispered, her hands wringing together. "I know it doesn't. But I needed to say it. I needed you to know that I believed her because it was easier than facing the truth." "And what truth is that?" Logan asked, his voice sharp. Her eyes dropped to the ground. "That I let her manipulate me. That I was afraid of losing what I had, even if it meant losing you." The words hung heavy in the air. Logan said nothing, his eyes fixed on her as she struggled to hold herself together. Finally, she looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know." Logan stared back, unblinking. "You needed me to know?" He stepped forward, voice low and controlled. "You watched them drag me out. You watched them throw me onto the street. You didn't even ask me if it was true. Not once." Her hands shook. "I know. I was weak. You were a coward." The words hit her like a slap, her eyes flaring with pain. She didn't argue. She didn't fight back. She just nodded, her shoulders slumping even further. "I'm trying to make it right." Logan tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "Make it right?" He laughed, the sound hollow and sharp. "There's no making it right. You threw me away. You believed her lies. You let them destroy me. And for what?" Chloe's hands twisted together, her eyes glimmering with regret. "I don't know. I wish I could go back." "You can't." Logan stepped back, crossing his arms. "The past is dead, just like Ethan." Her breath hitched, her lips parting as if to argue, but she stopped herself. She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I get it. I needed you to know." He turned his back to her, his eyes scanning the shipyard. "You know the way out." She lingered for a moment, her footsteps heavy and hesitant. But she didn't try to speak again. He heard her turn, her footsteps fading back toward the gate. He waited until the fog swallowed her up, the shipyard silent once more. Logan stood there for a long time, staring out at the water, the distant sound of gulls echoing over the docks. He let the silence settle, his breath steady, his hands still. He had said his piece. He had drawn the line. He wasn't Ethan anymore. Ethan was gone, erased by lies and betrayal. He was Logan now, and he wasn't looking back. Logan wasted no time. Chloe's visit had stirred something inside him, a flicker of resolve that burned hotter than before. He had tried to walk away, to bury Ethan beneath layers of work and anonymity, but the past had a way of clawing its way back. This time, he wouldn't just walk away. He would finish it. The plan took shape quickly. He knew where to look, knew how to find the cracks Sophie had tried so desperately to cover up. Logan started with the evidence he had received, the bank records, the emails, the photographs. He didn't just want to expose her. He wanted to dismantle everything she had built with lies and manipulation. He spent hours poring over the documents, highlighting transactions, linking names to accounts. His background in finance and logistics made it easy to trace her steps, to find the weak points in her carefully constructed web. He made copies, backing up everything twice over, storing it securely where no one would find it. He didn't act right away. He let it simmer, building momentum. He spent his days at the docks, nodding to the same faces, lifting the same crates, keeping his head down. But he listened. He listened to whispers in the diner, to passing conversations at the pub, to the occasional mention of Sophie's name spoken with disdain. The timing had to be perfect. It started with a whisper. An anonymous tip sent to a local news outlet, just enough information to raise questions. The story trickled out slowly, accusations of fraud, whispers of blackmail, suspicious bank transactions linked back to Sophie. Her name spread through town like wildfire, the scandal gripping the locals with ferocity. Logan kept his head down, listening to the gossip swirl, nodding quietly as people shook their heads and murmured about how it all made sense. "I always knew there was something off about her," one of the dockworkers muttered over lunch. "Guess she finally got caught." The news hit harder when the evidence became public. Documents were leaked online, anonymous posts with screenshots of her transactions, conversations, secret accounts. People devoured it, sharing it, spreading it further than he could have hoped. Sophie tried to defend herself, of course. She made statements, sent letters to the editor, even tried to pin it on a smear campaign. But the evidence was too solid, too complete. She was drowning in it. Logan watched it all unfold from a distance, his expression calm and unyielding. He was careful, methodical, Nothing linked back to him. His hands were clean. He stayed in the shadows, just as he had planned. The final blow came 2 weeks later. Logan mailed out the last set of documents to the authorities: bank fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement. He knew where to look, where the bodies were buried, and he made sure it all came to light. It didn't take long for the investigation to begin. Sophie's accounts were frozen, her assets seized. She was paraded across the evening news, her face pale and gaunt, eyes hollow with disbelief. Logan watched from the pub, his hands wrapped around a glass of whiskey, the flickering screen reflecting in his eyes. "She's done for," one of the regulars muttered, shaking his head. "Serves her right." Logan took a slow sip, his gaze steady. "Yeah," he replied quietly. "Serves her right." The town moved on, as it always did. People whispered, they gossiped, but eventually the fog rolled back in and life returned to its familiar rhythm. Logan kept his routine, his hands busy, his mind sharp. He worked the docks, signed contracts, repaired ships. His name grew, his reputation solidified. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the water, Logan sat alone on the edge of the pier, watching the waves crash against the pylons. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a message from an unknown number. He opened it, his eyes scanning the text. "It's done." He stared at it for a long moment before typing back. "No trace." The response came almost immediately. "None." Logan slipped the phone back into his pocket, his hands folding neatly in his lap. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He simply watched the water, the ripples stretching out into the horizon. It was over. Sophie was gone. Her lies, her manipulations, her web of deceit, all of it burned to ash. And for the first time since he had driven away from that house, since he had left Ethan bleeding on the pavement, he felt free. The fog rolled in thick the next morning, curling around the docks like ghostly fingers. Logan moved through it with practiced ease, his footsteps steady and measured. The workers nodded to him as he passed, some tipping their caps, others offering a quick, respectful greeting. He had earned their trust, not just through hard work, but through integrity. The shipyard thrived. What had once been a crumbling, rusted lot now bustled with life and movement. Boats lined the pier, their hulls freshly painted, nets coiled neatly beside them. His name carried weight now. People respected him, not just for his work, but for his word. Harris approached him that afternoon, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. "Heard you finally put her away," he said, voice low. Logan didn't look up from the crate he was inspecting. "People talk." Harris chuckled, lighting up a cigarette. "They do more than talk, friend. They're saying you did what nobody else could." He took a long drag, blowing smoke into the salty air. "How's it feel?" Logan paused, setting the crate down carefully. He met Harris's eyes, his own gaze steady and unyielding. "Feels like it's done." Harris nodded approvingly. "That's a good answer." He slapped Logan on the back before moving off, his footsteps fading into the clatter of the docks. Logan watched him go, his hands flexing unconsciously. The sense of completion hung around him like a fog, thick and heavy, but oddly peaceful. Sophie was gone. Her lies, her manipulations, everything she'd built on deceit, it had all crumbled. And he had watched it burn from the safety of the shadows. Days turned into weeks, and the shipyard flourished. More boats came in, contracts were signed, and the town began to lean on Logan for more than just dock work. He expanded the operations, small at first, repairs and restorations. Then bigger projects. Before long, he was managing shipments, overseeing logistics, and consulting on projects that reached far beyond the fog-drenched harbor. People began to call him Mr. Logan. It was strange at first, formal, distant, but it suited him. He wasn't Ethan anymore. Ethan was a ghost, a shadow left bleeding on the pavement. Mr. Logan was solid, real. He took an office above the main dock, a small corner room with wide windows overlooking the harbor. It was simple, just a desk, a chair, and a battered filing cabinet that rattled when you opened it. But it was his. He kept it neat, organized, the walls bare except for a map of the coastline, dotted with pins marking every place he now did business. Maggie from the diner still poured his coffee every morning. She slid it across the counter without a word, just a nod of acknowledgement. He nodded back, sipped quietly, paid in cash. It became a ritual, one of the few he allowed himself. "Look at you," she said one morning, eyeing him with a smirk. "You're the big man in town now." He shook his head, dropping a few bills on the counter. "I'm just getting by." She laughed, the sound rough but genuine. "Keep telling yourself that." The past faded with each passing day. Logan became woven into the town's fabric, someone you could rely on, someone you could trust. His name was spoken with respect, His presence met with nods and handshakes. He kept his head down, worked with his hands, and never spoke about the life he left behind. Until she came back. It was a Thursday afternoon, the sun barely cutting through the fog that blanketed the pier. Logan was overseeing a shipment of lumber, his hands dusty and raw, when he saw her, Chloe, standing at the edge of the dock, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She looked different now, thinner, shoulders slumped, eyes hollowed by regret. Her hair was pulled back, strands of gray weaving through the brown. She saw him and froze, her eyes widening, lips parting as if she had been waiting to speak for years. He watched her, unmoving, his expression hard and unyielding. She took a hesitant step forward, then another, her heels clicking against the wood. "Logan," she whispered, voice cracking. "That's my name," he replied evenly, wiping his hands on a rag. "What do you want?" Chloe's eyes glimmered with something fragile. "Hope, maybe. I just wanted to see you. You've seen me." He turned back to the crates, stacking them with practiced ease. "You can go now." She flinched, her hands twisting together. I heard what you did." Logan paused, his hands stilling. He didn't turn around. "What did I do?" "You brought her down." "Sophie." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know how, but you did it." He straightened, wiping the dust from his palms. Truth has a way of catching up. Chloe's eyes dropped to the ground, her shoulders slumping further. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything. I was blind. It's too late for that," he cut her off, his voice sharp and final. "You made your choice." Her breath hitched, but she nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "I understand." She looked up one last time, her eyes searching his face for something he couldn't give. "I just wanted you to know. I'm proud of you." Logan's expression didn't change. "Goodbye, Chloe." She stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked away, her footsteps fading into the fog. He watched her go, the tension in his shoulders unwinding with every step she took. She disappeared into the mist, just like everything else from his past. He turned back to the crates, lifting one onto his shoulder. He had work to do. The shipyard thrived under Logan's steady hand. His reputation spread, not just as a man who rebuilt what was broken, but as someone who never cut corners, never missed a deadline, and never backed down from a challenge. His presence was a fixture in the town, his routine as predictable as the tides. People came to him for more than just work now. They sought his advice on repairs, asked for help with their own projects, even stopped him on the street to shake his hand. He had become a symbol of resilience, someone who arrived with nothing and built something real, something that mattered. Maggie at the diner kept his coffee cup full each morning, sliding it across the counter with a nod. "You've done well for yourself," she remarked one morning, watching him with a smile that was almost proud. "Just getting by," he replied, sipping the hot coffee. Maggie chuckled, wiping down the counter with a practiced hand. "You know, people talk. Say you're the best thing to happen to this town in years." He shrugged, finishing his drink. "I just work. Nothing special." She leaned forward, eyes sharp and knowing. "People remember things like that. You keep it up, and you won't just be Logan from the shipyard. You'll be the man who brought this town back to life." Logan only nodded, leaving cash on the counter before stepping back into the chill of the morning air. The fog hung thick over the docks, shrouding the buildings in gray. He moved through it with practiced ease, nodding to the dockworkers, greeting Harris with a firm handshake. His place was secure. He had built it with his own hands. Months passed, and Logan continued to grow. He expanded the shipyard, took on more projects, and hired more hands. He started to invest in the town, helping restore old shops, fixing up the boardwalk, repairing the fishing boats that had been left to rot. His name was on the lips of every shopkeeper, every fisherman, every business owner in town. People respected him, trusted him. He had become a pillar of the community, someone people turned to when things went wrong. He kept his head down, his hands busy, and his past buried beneath the weight of progress. It wasn't until one evening, as he locked up the shipyard, that he realized just how far he had come. Harris caught up with him just as he was sliding the last bolt into place. "Heard they're naming the new dock after you," he said, lighting a cigarette. Logan raised an eyebrow. "Didn't know they were building a new dock." Harris chuckled, exhaling a plume of smoke. "That's 'cause you're too busy running this one. But yeah, town council voted last week. Logan Wharf, they're calling it. Said it's the least they could do." For a moment, Logan just stood there, hands tucked into his pockets, the fog curling around his boots. Logan Wharf. It sounded strange, like something that belonged to someone else. But he knew it was real. He had built it, brick by brick. "Guess I should thank someone," he said finally. Nah, Harris replied, clapping him on the back. You already did. Every day you show up. The dedication ceremony was small, just a handful of town officials and dock workers standing around in the morning mist. They unveiled the plaque with his name etched in silver, the letters gleaming in the light. Logan stood back, his hands folded in front of him, nodding politely as they shook his hand, clapped him on the back, and thanked him for everything he'd done. But when the speeches ended and the crowd began to disperse, he stayed behind. He walked to the edge of the pier, his name shining behind him, and looked out over the water. The fog hung low over the waves, the boats bobbing silently in the distance. He let out a slow breath, the chill of the morning filling his lungs. He had done it. Not just survived, but built something real. Something that couldn't be taken away with lies or whispers. Logan turned back, his eyes scanning the shipyard, the workers moving in steady rhythm, the boats unloading in practiced efficiency. It was his now. His life. His name. For the first time, he felt complete. Solid. Unbreakable. The ceremony lingered in his thoughts long after the crowd had dispersed. Logan returned to his small office above the shipyard, closing the door quietly behind him. The room was modest, just a desk, a chair, and a wide window that overlooked the harbor. He sank into the leather chair, its worn edges creaking beneath his weight, and let out a long breath. The plaque with his name on it felt surreal. Logan Wharf. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, his hands folded neatly in his lap. His mind drifted back to the early days, the fog-drenched motel room, the diner with the chipped mugs, the quiet labor on the docks. He had been nothing more than a shadow then, a ghost drifting through life with no purpose, no direction. But now? Now he was rooted. Solid. His hands were calloused from work, his shoulders stronger, his back straighter. He had built something real, something that couldn't be taken away by whispers or lies. He had clawed his way out of the darkness, brick by brick, heartbeat by heartbeat. Logan reached into the drawer of his desk, pulling out a small, battered photograph. It was the only remnant he had kept, a tiny, crumpled image of himself and Chloe, years ago, before it all fell apart. Her smile was bright, his arm slung casually over her shoulder, both of them looking carefree and invincible. He stared at it for a long moment before setting it back down. There were no tears, no regret, only a whisper of something he couldn't quite name. He closed the drawer, locking it with a definitive click. That life was gone. Sealed away. He was someone else now, someone stronger. The weeks blurred into each other, work piling up, contracts flowing in. Logan expanded the shipyard further, buying up old docks, restoring them with fresh wood and iron. He invested in fishing boats, struck deals with suppliers, and soon enough, Logan Wharf became the beating heart of the harbor. The local paper even ran a story on him, from stranger to savior, how one man brought the docks back to life. He read it in Maggie's diner, a smirk playing on his lips as she poured him another cup of coffee. Look at you, she teased, tapping the headline with her fingernail. Local hero. He shrugged, folding the paper neatly. I just work. That's why they like you, she replied, sliding him his usual toast. You don't try to be something you're not. Logan just nodded, chewing quietly as she bustled off to serve another customer. He finished his meal, paid in cash, and stepped back out into the morning chill. His footsteps echoed along the wooden planks of the pier as he made his way back to his office, nodding to workers as he passed. He didn't think about the past anymore. He didn't need to. He had buried Ethan with the whispers, the lies, the betrayal. He had become something else, something unbreakable. It was a few days later when he found an envelope slipped under his office door. There was no return address, no markings of any kind. He picked it up cautiously, his fingers sliding over the paper's edge before tearing it open. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded neatly. He unfolded it, his eyes scanning the handwritten lines. You're not who they think you are. Ethan. He stared at it, his heart thumping quietly against his ribs. The handwriting was unfamiliar, sharp and slanted, like someone had written it in a hurry. He read it again, slowly, letting the words sink in. Logan set the paper down on his desk, his jaw tightening. He reached for the blinds, snapping them shut, the sunlight vanishing from his office. His mind worked quickly, tracing every connection, every person who might have known. He had been careful, methodical, even. There was no trail, no link. He had buried Ethan deep. And yet, someone knew. He stood by the window for a long time, staring out over the harbor, his hands clasped behind his back. The town moved as it always did, boats drifting in and out, workers hauling crates, the fog hanging low over the water. But everything felt different now. Someone knew. And if someone knew, it meant there were still threads left untied, pieces of his past that hadn't been burned away. Logan flexed his hands, the muscles in his forearms tightening. He wouldn't go back. Not now. Not ever. Whoever sent that letter had made a mistake. A mistake that he would soon correct. Logan stood by the window long after the sun had dipped below the horizon, his eyes locked on the flickering lights of the harbor. The letter lay open on his desk, the words burned into his mind. You're not who they think you are. Ethan. He had been so careful. His steps were measured, his actions deliberate. He built a life that had no connection to the past, buried every trace of the man he once was. And yet, someone knew. Someone had watched, waiting for the right moment to strike. Logan wasn't about to let that happen. The next morning, he locked his office, pulling his collar tight against the cold wind as he made his way down Main Street. The fog clung to the ground, curling around his boots as he walked. Maggie waved to him from the diner window, but he kept moving, nodding curtly before disappearing around the corner. He knew where he had to go. The building was unmarked, tucked away at the edge of town, its windows dark and uninviting. He knocked twice, the sound sharp and deliberate. The door creaked open, revealing a man with silver hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Logan, the man greeted, his voice low. Collins, Logan replied, stepping inside. The door shut behind him, the lock clicking into place. The room smelled of old paper and stale cigarettes. Maps were pinned to the walls, dotted with red ink and scribbled notes. Collins moved behind his desk, settling into a chair that groaned under his weight. I need a favor, Logan began, setting the letter down on the desk. Collins picked it up, his eyes scanning the words. He raised an eyebrow. Seems like someone's been paying attention. Logan leaned forward, his hands resting on the edge of the desk. I want to know who. Collins chuckled, setting the paper down. Of course you do. Lucky for you. I like a challenge. He opened a drawer, pulling out a notepad and a fountain pen. I'll need a few days. You still got that secure line? Logan nodded. I do. Good. I'll call when I have something. Without another word, Logan turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind him. The wind hit his face, sharp and biting, but it only sharpened his focus. Whoever had sent that note had made their first mistake. Now it was his turn. The call came 3 days later. It was just after dawn, the sky still draped in shadows. Logan answered on the first ring. It's Collins. You got a minute? Logan leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking beneath him. I'm listening. Found your ghost, Collins replied, his voice low and satisfied. And you're not going to believe who it is. Logan said nothing, waiting. Chloe. The silence stretched thin and taut. He closed his eyes, his hands gripping the edge of the desk. That's not possible. Collins laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Trust me, it is. She's been digging around, asking questions. Even tried to get into county records a few weeks back. Logan opened his eyes, staring out the window at the rising fog. Why? You tell me, Collins replied. Maybe she got tired of living with the truth. Or maybe she just wanted to find you. Doesn't matter. What matters is she knows. Logan exhaled slowly, his mind racing. And the note? Collins paused. I can't prove it, but I bet my last dollar she sent it. Looks like she wanted to rattle your cage. A flicker of something dangerous burned in Logan's eyes. Well, she succeeded. There was a pause, then Collins spoke again, his voice more serious. You want me to take care of it? Logan thought for a long moment, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the wood of his desk. Finally, he shook his head. No, I'll handle it. Your call, Collins replied, his tone casual. Just don't wait too long. People like her. They don't stop digging once they start. Logan hung up without another word, the silence of his office settling around him. He stared at the letter, the sharp slant of the handwriting, the way his old name was scrawled like a taunt. Ethan. She had found him. After everything, after the ashes and the rebuilding and the miles of distance, she had still found him. His jaw clenched, hands balling into fists. This time, there would be no mercy. If she wanted answers, he would give them to her. But not the way she expected. Logan stood, slipping on his jacket, his mind already working through the next steps. He had rebuilt his life from nothing, stone by stone, brick by brick. He wouldn't let her tear it down. Not now. Not ever. He locked his office behind him, stepping out into the cold morning air. The fog was thick, swirling around his feet as he walked down the pier, his footsteps solid and unyielding. He had a meeting to arrange. Chloe wanted answers. He would give them to her. One piece at a time. Logan moved with purpose. He locked up the shipyard early, turning off the lights and double-checking the doors before stepping out into the evening fog. The town was quiet, streetlights casting long shadows across the cobblestone roads. His boots echoed with each step as he made his way to the diner. Maggie raised an eyebrow when he stepped inside. "You're here late." "Couldn't sleep," he replied, slipping into his usual booth. She poured him a cup of coffee, setting it down with a nod. "You want anything else?" "No, just the coffee." She didn't press further, just walked back to the counter, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He sipped the bitter liquid slowly, eyes fixed on the condensation gathering at the edge of the window. The fog outside clung to the street, thick and unmoving, like the town itself was holding its breath. He didn't have to wait long. The bell above the door chimed, and she stepped inside. Chloe. Her coat was pulled tight around her shoulders, eyes scanning the room nervously. When she saw him, she hesitated, her hand frozen on the doorknob. Logan didn't move. He just raised his cup slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. She swallowed, then walked over, her footsteps muffled against the worn tile. She sat across from him, folding her hands in her lap. "You called me," she began, her voice just above a whisper. "I did," he replied, setting his cup down. "You've been busy." Her eyes flickered with surprise. I don't know what you're talking about." He leaned back, stretching his arms across the back of the booth. "I think you do." Chloe's hands twisted together, her fingers knotted tight. I wanted to understand. I wanted to know where you went, why you left." Logan stared at her for a long moment, his gaze unflinching. "You know why I left." She shook her head, eyes glassy with something between regret and desperation. "No, I don't. I thought I did, but..." Her voice cracked. "I was wrong." He leaned forward, his eyes sharp and unyielding. "You were more than wrong. You stood by and watched them destroy me. You helped them." Her breath hitched. I believed her. I believed Sophie. I thought. "You thought what?" His voice was low, steady, lethal. "That I would throw everything away for her? That I would betray you like that?" Chloe looked down, her hands trembling. I didn't want to believe it, but she was so convincing. She had everything: proof, messages, pictures. Logan let out a sharp laugh, the sound harsh and humorless. "Proof that you never bothered to show me. Proof that you never even asked about." She flinched, but didn't argue. Her eyes were locked on the table, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "I know I was wrong. I know I was blind. But when I found out, when I learned the truth..." "You started digging." Her eyes shot up, wide and startled. He met her gaze evenly, his expression unreadable. "You really think I wouldn't notice? You think I haven't been watching?" Chloe's mouth opened, but no words came out. "You went to the county records. You asked questions. You left messages. And you sent me that note." He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You wanted me to know you found me. You wanted me to be afraid." Her lips trembled. "No. I wanted you to talk to me." He shook his head, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I don't talk, Chloe. Not anymore." The silence stretched thin between them, the tension hanging heavy. She looked away, blinking back tears. "I just wanted to understand." Logan sat back, folding his hands on the table. "Understand what? Why you didn't fight. Why you just disappeared." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You were strong. You never backed down from anything. But you just vanished." Logan didn't blink. "Because I was done." She swallowed hard, her eyes shimmering. "I was wrong, about everything." "I know," he replied, his voice steady. Her breath hitched, the tears finally spilling over. "Can you ever forgive me?" Logan stared back, unflinching. "No." Chloe nodded slowly, the tears streaking down her cheeks. She made no move to wipe them away. "I deserve that." "Yes, you do." He reached into his jacket, pulling out an envelope, sliding it across the table. She stared at it, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What is this?" she whispered. "Everything you need to know." He stood up, sliding his hands into his coat pockets. "You wanted answers. Now you have them." She stared down at the envelope, her hands trembling. "Logan, He stepped back, his eyes hard. "I stopped being Ethan a long time ago. That life is gone. You wanted to know why? That's your answer." Without another word, he turned and walked out of the diner, the bell chiming softly behind him. The fog swallowed him up as he stepped back onto the street, his footsteps silent and steady. He didn't look back. Not anymore.